What you are about to witness is not opposition rhetoric. It is not speculation. It is the minister himself, the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, Mr. Floyd Green, on the floor of Parliament, responding to questions about mining, land rehabilitation, dust, compensation, resettlement, and enforcement. The record shows a pattern that should deeply concern every Jamaican. A minister who is unaware of core problems, uncertain about his own enforcement powers, and repeatedly pushing responsibility away instead of exercising authority. This is not just poor communication. This is a breakdown in governance.
All right, let me thank the members. I will start by saying I recognize the speaker gave a lot of latitude. And I'll explain in some of the things. Once the answers are given to the questions, the follow-up should really be confined to the answers that have been given, right? Because sometimes we then introduce matters that it was outside of the scope and clearly would have been outside of maybe the preparation for this. So I say that to my colleagues across the aisle. I will try as far as possible to answer the questions posed, especially those that touch and concern directly the subjects that I had responded on. Some of the questions my colleague from Northwest said, Catherine, do not. But there are matters that you have raised that I would suggest that you put in writing and send to me. Right? So the matters in relation to damage, the matters in relation to dust, the matters in relation to claims around acid rain and claims around greater roof damage, those are things that I would suggest you pen to me so I can ask the teams to investigate, because those would require investigation. Again, I would not have gotten a brief about the employment practices. But
at the very start of his response, the minister narrows responsibility. He tells the House that many matters raised were outside the scope of what he was prepared for, and suggests that some should be put in writing for investigation. This is the first warning sign. Parliament is not a complaints desk. It is the highest accountability forum in the country. A minister responsible for mining should come prepared with enforcement records, penalty statistics, compliance timelines, and regulatory outcomes. Saying, "I was not briefed," is not an explanation. It is an admission that the ministry does not command its own regulatory system. Here, the minister tells a member to write to him about dust damage, blasting damage, acid rain, and employment practices because these matters require investigation. These are not new issues. They are the most basic and predictable impacts of mining. A competent ministry should already have environmental monitoring reports, health impact assessments, dust mitigation compliance data, blasting damage claims statistics. Asking members of Parliament to create evidence for the ministry is backward. The ministry should already be the custodian of this information. This is governance running in reverse.
Answers that I will give. But I will answer this directly, even though it was not directly raised, but I was unaware of any difficulty in having meetings with JBI, right? And that we will fix.
When told that MPs struggle to even get meetings with agencies like JBI, the minister responds, "I was unaware of any difficulty and that we will fix." This is one of the most revealing moments. It means there is no system tracking stakeholder complaints, no performance monitoring of agencies, no accountability for public access. If the minister is unaware that elected representatives cannot engage statutory bodies, then oversight is not functioning.
The member from Southeast St. Anne. Again, the consistency of payment in relation to the dust is not a matter that has come to me before, right? I would again ask seriously that you pen a letter to me around it.
On the inconsistency of dust compensation, he says, that is not a matter that has come to me before. Dust compensation is not a side issue. It affects health, property, livelihoods, and dignity. If the minister has never been briefed on whether compensation is consistent or fair, then there is no national standard, no enforcement, no regulatory supervision. Compensation becomes charity instead of law. He then says, remember, we are dealing with private companies. This line is deeply misleading. Mining is a licensed activity on public resources. Private ownership does not reduce public accountability. It increases it. The minister is not a mediator between equals. He is the enforcer of national interest.
These things have to be recorded. Remember how our bauxite industry is. We are dealing with private companies.
When asked why land that should have been certified by 2025 remains uncertified, he says, I wouldn't want to proffer a reason on behalf of the company. This is regulatory collapse. The company is not supposed to explain itself voluntarily. The ministry is supposed to determine non-compliance, apply penalties, compel correction. Waiting on the company to justify delay reverses the power relationship.
I wouldn't want to proffer a reason on behalf of the company for their delay. The approach that I have taken and that I have said to the Commissioner of Mines is that we're embarking now on a zero tolerance approach in relation to the time for certification, right? So, as you would have seen, those 70 hectares should have been rehabilitated and certified by the end of 2025, and we have already written to the company in that regard. It is for the company to say to us if there were extenuating circumstances that made that impossible, and then we would have to consider it, right? But I wouldn't want to hazard any guesses in that regard. The member from South Manchester, he got the greatest latitude and made a lot of comments before he went to the questions. I will check in relation to whether
The
the
following
25
is the most damning moment. I will check. I don't have that information at hand. This was said about the used $25,000 per hectare penalty. That penalty is the central enforcement mechanism for land rehabilitation. If the minister does not know whether it is recurring, whether it escalates, how it is applied, then enforcement is not operational. It is theoretical. No serious regulator is uncertain about how his strongest sanction works.
The member from South Manchester, he got the greatest latitude and made a lot of comments before he went to the questions. I will check in relation to whether the 25,000 is a one-off fee per hectare or whether that's an annual fee. I don't have that information at hand, but I will find out.
When asked whether dust compensation is adequate, the minister says, I won't speak to the adequacy of dust compensation. But adequacy is a policy question. It is the minister's duty to determine whether compensation protects health, property, and dignity. Refusing to speak to adequacy means refusing responsibility.
I won't speak to the adequacy of the dust compensation, right?
He admits community councils are weak and need revamping. But again, no deadlines, no structure, no enforcement power, only studies, only future meetings. Process replaces action.
Councils, and a lot that you said, the member from South Manchester, speaks to one of the last points you made, that the community councils are not functioning as they should. for a number of different reasons. So I had already asked for a study to be done on the community councils by JBI, and we are looking to see how we can revamp the community councils. The first thing is that MPs have to be included in the consultation framework. And the member from Northwest St. Catherine raised that as an issue that should be non-negotiable, right? So
The minister speaks of audits, committees, reviews, plans and discussions. But nowhere do we hear timelines, compliance targets, penalties applied, public reporting requirements. Everything is pending. Nothing is binding.
Let me deal with the matter of lands in general. I have mandated that we are to do a full audit of the bauxite lands that are either have been mined and have been reclaimed but have not been handed back to government. Because there is to be another step, because those lands are to be returned to the Commissioner of Lands. So I've asked for an audit to be done on that one. Two, the lands that there are no plans to mine, that are still under the purview of the bauxite company, that they have already determined for multiple reasons that it would not be economical to mine those lands, that those lands again be handed back to the government so that we can put them to productive use. And that would be across all the areas, North West St. Catherine, across all the areas, Southeast St. Anne. I had that discussion with the company in Southeast St. Anne. And that also means that where the land has not yet been handed back to the member from South Manchester, one of his questions, where the bauxite company is still in possession, but based on their mining plan, they are not going to reach to that area for another 5, 10 years. And that area is occupied by farmers, or can be occupied by farmers, that they enter into lease arrangement with these farmers, or allow us through the Agri-Invest Corporation to enter into leases with the company, and then we can sublease to the farmers so that they have some tenureship. That's very, very important. That's something that we're pushing for this year, because
What this parliamentary exchange reveals is not one mistake. It reveals a system where the minister is unaware of core operational failures. Enforcement mechanisms exist on paper, but not in practice. Communities must document their own suffering. Companies explain themselves instead of being compelled. Accountability is postponed through letters, meetings, and studies. For the Jamaican people, this is not abstract. It means unreclaimed land, insecure farming, delayed titles, unprotected health, and compensation systems that depend on negotiation instead of justice. When a minister says, "I will check" about enforcement powers, when he says, "Write to me" about national failures, and when he refuses to judge adequacy of harm compensation, he is not governing. He is reacting. And Jamaica deserves leadership that enforces law, not leadership that waits for explanations.